Dad, there's no money on the card. My voice echoed through the grocery store aisle louder than I meant. The cashier looked at me with pity. Behind me the line grew. A woman sighed. A kid dropped a cereal box. I felt my face burn. That card was supposed to be mine. My backup fund, my small lifeline Dad always said I could use, in case of emergency. Except this time it wasn't an emergency. It was survival. My name is Lena. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Have you ever realized too late that the people you trust most are the ones draining you dry? One swipe, one lie, one favor at a time? I left the store with nothing but humiliation. The groceries stayed behind. The cashier avoided my eyes. By the time I reached the parking lot, my phone was already ringing. My sister's name flashed across the screen. "What did you do?" she screamed. "You just made us look stupid in front of everyone. You used Dad's card without asking." "I was told it was for emergencies," I said quietly. "Oh please," she snapped. "You always think you're the victim. Just stop embarrassing this family." I could hear laughter in the background, her friends. She was on speaker. And that's when it hit me, this wasn't about a card. It was about control. I hung up before she could say another word. I didn't go home. Instead, I sat in my car scrolling through my banking app trying to make sense of it. My savings account, $0. Joint account, closed. The emergency fund card, declined. Every dollar I'd earned from part-time jobs since I was 15, gone. At first, I thought it was a mistake. A glitch. A bank issue. Something simple. But then I noticed the transactions, withdrawals in the thousands, all recent. The name next to them? T. Reynolds. My sister's fiancé. The guy who once called me the charity case of the family. I gripped my phone so hard I nearly cracked the screen. Then I called home. Dad answered, voice low and calm, too calm. "Dad," I said, shaking, "why is there no money on the card? Where's my account?" There was a pause. Then, "You weren't using it, Lena. We lent it to Tyler for his business. You'll get it back when he's on his feet." Lent it. Like my years of work, my independence, my security, were all just favors to be handed out. I wanted to scream. Instead, I said, "You gave my money to him?" Dad sighed. "You wouldn't understand. He's family." I looked up at my reflection in the windshield, pale, tired, but awake for the first time in years. And I whispered, "So am I." That night I didn't sleep. I started digging. Old receipts, account numbers, emails. Every trail led back to them. And what I found next wasn't just betrayal. It was theft dressed as love. The next morning I drove home before the sun came up. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that holds secrets. My sister's car was in the driveway, her fiancé's truck parked next to it. I didn't knock. I walked straight in. Mom was sitting at the kitchen table sipping coffee like nothing was wrong. Dad was reading the paper. Tyler was on the couch, shirtless, scrolling through his phone with my laptop beside him. My laptop. No one even looked up. "Morning," I said. My voice shook. Tyler smirked. "Well, look who finally decided to visit." I ignored him. "Dad, where's my money?" That got everyone's attention. Dad set down his paper slowly. "Lena, we already talked about this." "No," I said, stepping forward. "Look." I didn't agree. Mom frowned. "Sweetheart, don't start this again. Tyler needed help and family helps each other." Then maybe he should have asked me before emptying my account. Tyler leaned back, arms behind his head. "Relax. It's not like you were using it. I'll pay it back once my business picks up." I stared at him. "What business?" He grinned. "Crypto. You wouldn't get it." I felt my chest tighten. My savings, years of work, turned into some arrogant man's gambling money. I turned to Dad. "You authorized those transfers. That's fraud." He stood up. "Watch your tone, young lady." Mom chimed in, her voice soft but sharp. "Don't talk to your father like that. He's just trying to help your sister's future." My sister finally appeared at the stairs, hair messy, eyes full of annoyance. "Oh my God, Lena, can you stop making everything about you?" she said. "You stole my money." I snapped. It's called sharing, she smirked. You should try it. Something inside me broke then, quietly, cleanly. I didn't yell. I just picked up my laptop from the couch and opened the financial records I'd printed out. All of this, I said, spreading them across the table, is in my name. The withdrawals, the transfers, everything. You didn't even bother hiding it. Tyler looked uneasy now. You can't prove. Actually, I said, tapping one paper, I can. Because you sent yourself an email with the transfer confirmation. From my account. Dad's face changed, not guilt but fear. Lena, lower your voice. Why? So the neighbors don't hear that your precious son-in-law drained your daughter's life savings. Mom stood up. Enough. We did what we thought was best. You always overreact. I laughed. A hollow, shaky laugh. Overreact? You stole from me, humiliated me, and you think I'm overreacting. Silence. Then I looked straight at Tyler. You've got 24 hours to pay it back. All of it. He snorted. Or what? I picked up my phone and hit record. Or I make sure every investor, every family member, and every person you know sees what you did. For the first time, no one spoke. Dad said quietly, you wouldn't do that. I met his eyes. Watch me. I walked out. By the time I reached my car, my phone was buzzing nonstop. Texts from my sister, missed calls from Mom. But I didn't answer. Because I wasn't the quiet daughter anymore. I was the storm they created. And storms don't apologize. I sat in my car with the engine off and the city breathing around me, scrolling through the printouts again like they were maps to a buried thing. Each line was a footprint. Dates, amounts, transfer IDs. $12,400. That was the number that would keep looping in my head. $12,400 I'd saved in nights and shifts and folding laundry until my fingers ached. $12,400 traded for Tyler's startup, a handful of crypto ads and Eric's bar tabs. There's a cold clarity that comes when you stop pretending you'll be forgiven. It's the point where grief becomes a plan. I called the bank first. The woman on the other end listened, professional and bored, until I gave her the dates and the transfer codes. We can reopen an investigation, she said. It takes time, ma'am. Time. A word families use to bury things. I thanked her and hung up, feeling like I'd put a single coin into a slot machine and was hoping the lights would change. Then I went to work. Double shift at the cafe, hands busy, questions quieter in the steam of the espresso machine. But my head was elsewhere. I made lists on napkins. People to call, places to check, vulnerabilities to exploit. Secrets I'd learned are just things waiting for a spotlight. First I traced Eric. He'd bragged about his investor connections at dinner parties. A few Google searches, a LinkedIn profile that felt manufactured, an email address that matched the transfer receipt. Next I found Tyler's PayPal, then his Venmo, then a hidden Instagram full of shots from rooftop bars I'd never been invited to. The evidence piled up like bricks. Not because I wanted to burn them, because I wanted to build something sturdy enough to stand on. That night I did more than gather proof. I rehearsed the reveal in my head. Public humiliation is a crude weapon unless you sharpen it with precision. I wrote an email to every person who mattered in Tyler's orbit. Past employers, college friends, that one aunt who always bragged about family integrity. I attached copies of the transaction confirmations, highlighted the transfers, and kept the message clinical. No flourish. No plea. Just facts. And then I paused, hovered over send, and didn't press it. Not yet. What I did do was softer and meaner. I created a meeting, a fake pitch for Tyler's business, that required Eric's presence and an audience. I used the investor email I'd found and booked a conference room at a downtown co-working space under the guise of a tech accelerator. I rang a few people who owed Tyler favors and asked them to come look. Nothing more than curious attendees, amplifiers primed. I wanted witnesses who'd later say, he did this in front of everyone. The next morning I walked into the house with a calm so practiced it could have been a costume. Breakfast was the same performance. Casual questions, forced smiles, Tyler's laugh like static. And yet underneath it all the plan was moving. My messages, my calls, my little traps were being set into motion. Everything I'd been denied, respect, security, dignity, I was going to take back not as a scream but as a slow, unignorable light. Before I left, I looked at Dad. He was shuffling through a magazine, pretending not to watch. I felt no love for him in that moment, only a steady resolve. "You'll see," I said quietly, not a threat but a promise. He glanced up, fingers pausing. "Don't do anything rash," he muttered. The words were automatic. Old habits die hard. I smiled anyway. "Rashness rarely wins," I told him. "Strategy does." Outside, the city hummed. My chest felt lighter than it had since the card was declined. Revenge, I realized, wasn't about the money. It was about truth, laid clean on the table where everyone could count it. The trap was set and I had the receipts ready to drop. And when the lights finally flicked on, they would see what their casual betrayals looked like in daylight. The conference room smelled like new chairs and nervous ambition. Glass walls, a long polished table, sunlight folding onto the floor in rectangles. I sat at the end, phone on silent, a single printout of the transfer confirmations tucked into my purse like a loaded card. My chest hammered, not with fear but with a fierce kind of clarity, the kind that comes when you know the scene will finally change. Tyler arrived with Eric, swaggering as if the world still owed him favors. He flashed a smile at the handful of people who'd shown up. Curious neighbors, one of his old college buddies, a woman from a small angel investor group I'd invited under the pretense of a demo day. It felt almost cruel seeing them lined up like audience members. This was going to be public. This was going to count. Eric started the pitch with his usual bluster. Slick slides, buzzwords, a prototype that looked more like a fantasy than a product. People nodded politely. Tyler leaned in, playing the role of confident partner. I let them breathe for a few minutes, just enough to hear the fabric of their lies settle. Then I stood. The room quieted by reflex. "Excuse me," I said, voice steady. I walked to the front, slid the table of transaction printouts onto the lectern, and turned the laptop toward the crowd so everyone could see the highlighted lines, the dates, the amounts. $12,400. $2,000. $1,200. Faces shifted. Curiosity turned to confusion, then to a slow, sinking nausea as the receipts read like a ledger of theft. Tyler's face paled in the exact way it always does when the spotlight finally finds him, like a kid caught with his hand in a jar. Eric stuttered, flipping to the next slide, but no one cared about slides anymore. They cared about facts. "You used my account to fund this," I told him. "You used my savings for your business. You called it investment. You called it a loan. You called it family." My voice didn't shake. The room listened. Dad was front row at his own undoing, cheeks flushed, hands clasped as if he could press the truth back into a quiet corner. Someone recorded. A phone camera, another, then another, the sound of the world catching up. Messages pinged. A woman from the investor group leaned forward, eyes sharp. "We don't fund fraud," she said. Eric's jaw clenched. Tyler tried to laugh it off, then bit it back when he saw my evidence. Bank confirmation numbers, the email chain with his name, my voice in recorded voicemails asking where my money had gone. Tyler lunged for the printouts like he could snatch back the story. He grabbed a page, crumpled it, and in that motion he revealed something worse. A stack of charity receipts, old bank statements, a note with another name and an address I didn't recognize. His hand shook. "What is that?" I asked, and the room breathed with me. He sputtered something about a vendor, a contractor. His bravado leaked out. People smelled blood and a scam they hadn't expected. Eric pushed Tyler toward the door, murmuring legal threats about defamation. But outside, cameras had already been fed the clip. Texts were blowing up. Tyler's numbers, his contacts, his bright future, were muting into a background hum of disbelief. Dad stood then, slow and shaky. He tried to say something like, "This is a misunderstanding," but the way his voice cracked convinced everyone it wasn't. Mom's face crumpled, not from anger, but from the sudden recognition that she'd been keeping a house of lies. In the chaos, Tyler did the only thing he knew how to do. He broke. He screamed my name, called me insane, called me a thief, his words scattering like glass. Then he turned and ran, not out of shame but out of fear. His sprint made him look smaller than he ever had. The last image I held as the doors closed behind him was of Dad's hands, old and trembling, finally knowing the weight of what he'd done. I hadn't just exposed transactions. I'd exposed a pattern, a family that prioritized one child's illusions over another's reality. As people filed out, murmuring and recording, I picked up the crumpled page Tyler had dropped. It was a receipt, not for a vendor but for a casino shuttle service. The ink had not yet dried on a truth none of us were ready to admit. I folded the receipt and slid it into my pocket. The room's light shifted into late afternoon warmth, and for the first time in months I felt something like a clean wind through the house of my life. When I left, the sun hit the glass and fractured across the street like 100 small revelations. They would have to rebuild with open hands now. And the image of Tyler running, small and frantic, stayed with me, a final flash before the long work of consequences began. By the next morning the video was everywhere. Someone had uploaded it to TikTok under the caption, "Girl exposes her brother-in-law's scam in front of his investor's flushed face collision." 2 million views overnight. 3 million by noon. The comments read like a courtroom. Good for her. Parents like that never see it until it's too late. She's the hero and they called her selfish? Damn. I hadn't posted it myself, but it didn't matter. The story had escaped my control, and for the first time I didn't want it back. When I walked into work, my coworkers were whispering. My manager pulled me aside, eyes wide. "Lena, that was you, wasn't it?" I nodded. He smiled, slow and proud. "Guess you don't need to cover anyone else's tab anymore." But beneath the viral glow there was silence. From home. From Dad. From Mom. From my sister. Nothing. Not a text. Not a call. Not even a half-hearted apology. And that silence was heavier than any insult. That night I sat in my apartment, laptop open, scrolling through my accounts again, and for the first time in months I saw a notification. Refund processed, $12,400. Tyler had transferred it back. Or maybe Dad did. Either way, it felt less like money and more like surrender. A quiet, desperate attempt to patch a sinking ship. But I wasn't done. Because the money wasn't the point anymore. It was about truth. And truth doesn't stay buried just because people are uncomfortable. I found out through a mutual friend that Tyler's business had collapsed within days. Investors pulled out. His name was being whispered in circles that once praised him. My sister had deleted every photo of him from her socials. But not before she posted one cryptic story. Some people love drama because it's the only thing that gives them attention. I almost laughed. Almost. Instead I sent her a message. Some people love lies because they've never tried honesty. She left it on read. Dad finally called 2 nights later. His voice was tired, raw, stripped of authority. "Lena," he said, "you've made things difficult." I closed my eyes, took a breath. "No, Dad. I made things visible." He sighed. "You embarrassed your family." "I didn't embarrass us," I said quietly. "I revealed us." There was a pause so long I thought he'd hung up. Then softly, "Your mother hasn't stopped crying." That part hurt. Not because I felt guilty but because it confirmed how little they'd ever understood me. I wasn't the villain they made me out to be. I was just the first person to stop pretending. When the call ended I didn't cry. I sat there in the dark, letting the silence stretch out like a wound finally breathing. Outside, rain started tapping against the window. I watched the drops slide down the glass, each one catching a fragment of streetlight. It looked like something being washed clean. And for a moment, a small, quiet moment, I almost forgave them. Not because they deserved it, but because I finally understood. Forgiveness isn't for them. It's the moment you stop letting their damage define your story. I picked up my phone, opened my notes app, and typed 5 words that felt like armor. They took my trust. Not me. Tomorrow I'd begin something new. Not revenge. Not closure. Reinvention. A week after the video broke the internet, my world went eerily still. The cafe felt quieter. The sky sharper. The air lighter. When you burn a bridge, no one tells you how peaceful the ashes can look. I moved out of my old apartment that Friday. The lease had been under Dad's name and I didn't want a single thread tying me to that house of denial anymore. I found a small place downtown. Old brick, big windows, the kind of place where light spills in like an apology. I bought a new coffee mug. A blue one. No family crests, no shared initials. Just mine. The first night there I sat cross-legged on the floor surrounded by unpacked boxes, scrolling through emails. Somewhere between the online receipts and junk mail was one titled, "We saw what you did, let's talk." It was from a journalist, the Beacon Post. She'd seen the video, tracked me down, and wanted to write about financial abuse inside families. She wrote, "What you exposed isn't just theft. It's a pattern millions relate to." I stared at that line for a long time. Maybe that was the first time someone put words to what it actually was. Not just betrayal but a pattern. I agreed to meet her. We sat in a corner booth at a quiet diner. She ordered black coffee, I ordered pancakes I didn't touch. She asked about my family, the money, the years of Lena, "You'll understand when you're older." And somewhere between her questions, I realized I wasn't just telling a story, I was reclaiming it. When the article went live, the headline wasn't about scandal. It was about survival. She lost her savings to her own family and turned it into strength. The comments weren't cruel this time. They were kind. Women from Ohio, men from Texas, college students, single moms, all writing the same thing. This happened to me. It hit me like a wave. I wasn't alone. And maybe I never had been. Days later the calls started again. First Mom. Then my sister. Then Dad. I ignored the first few. Then one evening, against my better judgment, I picked up. "Lena," Mom said, her voice trembling, We're sorry. We just want things back to normal." Normal. The word almost made me laugh. Normal was where the lies lived, I said softly. "I'm not going back there." He started crying. I didn't. When we hung up, I felt something shift inside me. Not relief, not victory, but distance. The kind that protects instead of punishes. That night, I opened my laptop again, but not to check my bank account. I started writing, not a rant, not a letter, but a story. My story. Line by line, I poured the ache into words. And the strange thing was, the more I wrote, the less it hurt. Because sometimes revenge isn't about destroying them. It's about rebuilding yourself so loudly that their betrayal drowns in your growth. By midnight, I had 10 pages, raw, messy, alive. It felt like breathing after years underwater. When I finally shut my laptop, I whispered to the dark, "Thank you for breaking me, because now I know exactly how strong I am." 3 months later, I was standing backstage at a community event in Chicago. A mic in my hand, palms slick with nerves. A journalist from the Beacon Post had sent my story to a conference on financial independence. They invited me to speak. Me, the girl who once begged her dad for gas money. When the announcer called my name, I stepped out. The lights hit me like truth, bright, blinding, impossible to hide from. "My name is Lena," I began, voice trembling but steadying with each word. "And I learned the hard way that family can love you and still use you." There was a silence, not judgmental, just heavy, human. I told them everything. The trust fund that was a lie, the night my sister laughed, the moment I took that card and realized there was nothing left. And then I told them about rebuilding, dollar by dollar, breath by breath. When I finished, they stood. They clapped, not for revenge but for recovery. That night, my inbox filled with messages from strangers. Some thanking me, some confessing their own family betrayals. A woman wrote, "You gave me courage to look at my own father differently." A man said, "I finally closed a joint account that's been draining me for years." It was surreal, like my pain had turned into purpose. But not everyone was celebrating. Because back home, my family wasn't just angry. They were unraveling. Dad lost 2 clients when the truth about the borrowed money spread through town. My sister's influencer deals froze after people found her name in the exposé comments. Mom stopped posting those family love photos completely. And then, the letter came. A plain white envelope slid under my apartment door. No return address. Just my name, written in Mom's neat cursive. Inside there was no apology, just a check for $12,000 and a note that read, "This is what's left. Do whatever you want with it. But please, stop." I stared at it for a long time. $12,000. The number felt heavy, tainted. I didn't cash it. I framed it. Because it wasn't money anymore. It was proof. Proof that the truth always costs something. That weekend, the Beacon Post did a follow-up interview. The journalist asked, "Do you regret exposing them?" I thought about Dad's face the day I realized the accounts were empty. I thought about my sister's mocking laugh. And then I thought about that crowd clapping for me, the first time I'd ever felt free. I looked straight at the camera and said, "No. Because you can't heal what you keep protecting." The story went viral again, this time under a new title. She didn't just expose her family, she inspired thousands to break the silence. I should have felt done. But something deep in me whispered, it's not over yet. Because forgiveness isn't found in public applause. It's found in private peace. And mine was still waiting for me.